everybody, I'm Tim, and hindsight's 2020. You're watching Cigars Daily. Hey, get more out of this and all our videos when you join the community on Cigars Daily Plus and when you watch them on Rumble, where you can find extended versions with extra content. Everybody's got a certain perception of what cigars are like when they first get into them. Really depends on what you've seen before. For a lot of people, they've seen cigars in the movies where the villains are smoking a cigar and talking about how to kill James Bond. Or they've seen their superheroes doing it, or one of their dad or their uncle or their grandfather was a cigar smoker, and it's sort of like a fond memory for them. For me, I saw cigars 22 years ago as a rite of passage for a boy becoming a man. There were very few things that I could do when I turned 18 years old. At the time, those things were limited to buying dirty magazines and picking up a cigar. And I thought, man, the cigar sounds like actually a cleaner way to go, at least morally. And so I got my first cigar. My first one was a Connecticut shade, just like this Sereno Connecticut right here. I took the thing and made myself absolutely sick on it. There was so much I didn't know about the world of cigars, and over the last 22 years and 10 years of that in the cigar industry, I have had the incredible privilege to learn the depths and complexity of artistry in cigars and all the little nuanced things that go into being an aficionado. Those are some of the things I want to share here because there's a culture and an artwork behind cigars that's truly intriguing. And so today I want to take you inside. All the stuff I wish I had known on day one. Things that could have helped me not destroy cigars by cutting way too much off the cap and just shivering off a little bit or shaving off a little bit or destroying whole cigar collections just from sheer stupidity. And so today, if you've got that same stupidity that I had when I first got into cigars, or at least a little bit of ignorance going on, these are the things I wish I had known. And I'll tell you this, for the aficionados out there, if you'll drop a comment and tell me what's the one thing you wish you'd go back in time and tell yourself right before the first cigar and say, you really should know this. Drop that in the comments down below, because the Cigars Daily Nation is full of a lot of guys and gals who have an incredible wealth of knowledge about this stuff. And with no further ado, let's jump right in. So I had my first cigar in a billiard hall with some friends. Hell, we were a bunch of high schoolers, and it was like one of the few places that you could A, still smoke inside, and B, would let people under 21 in. So I got this long Connecticut shade Churchill. It was an Ashton, and I played billiards with my friends just because I thought, like, this is the now I'm a man thing to do. My first perception of cigars was really about who I thought they were for. I thought cigars were sort of a rite of passage thing, something that children couldn't and shouldn't do, and I still think that, and something that age-qualified adults could choose to do if they wanted to, and I still think that. To me, it was a manly thing. It was like something that Arnold Schwarzenegger would do right before he throws a guy off a cliff or something like that. And truthfully, these days I've learned that cigars are part of a huge community of people that represents just about every single walk of life out there. It's not a manly thing. Hell, there are people who do this on their date night who've been married for 10, 15 years. I met a couple earlier today from North Virginia who drove across the country to meet me and come to the Cigars Daily HQ. They enjoy cigars together, which is amazing to me. But the big thing that I didn't appreciate about cigars, and I wish I had known it so I could have appreciated it sooner, was what it takes to craft a single cigar. You see, premium cigars are so much more different than most of the stuff you'll find out there. The stuff that's behind the cash register at a gas station or in some random glass shop down the road. Premium handmade cigars like the Sereno Connecticut and so many others, they're made by hand. It takes 300 sets of hands to craft one cigar. Everything from the seed growing in the field to the harvesting of the leaves, the curing, the fermentation, the aging, the rolling, and lots of things in between. It's a lot of people. It's an unbelievably intensive man hours and hands-on leaf process. And it's a lengthy one. I had no idea that so much work went into it, and that the average cigar takes 3 years to produce. From seed to rolling, it's a 3-year time period. These days, I see cigars a lot less as a rite of passage for a boy becoming a man, and a lot more as a piece of artwork, carefully crafted to produce an experience that comes with complexity and depth. And another thing I missed as I transitioned from being a boy into a man was the degree to which this artistry, this artwork of premium cigars really is a lot more akin to a fine wine or a whiskey or bourbon, or things that we age and have patience with to create excellence. You know, I already mentioned that the average cigar takes 3 years to get rolled after they grow it from a seed. They age the stuff for an unbelievably long time in bales before they roll the cigars. But there's an extra step a lot of aficionados take to age their own cigars. Starting from just 4 months of letting a cigar rest, it begins to produce an extra level of refinement, smoothness, a better balance of flavor in the profile, and it can even remove some imperfections, little bitterness and things like that in the flavor. From 4 months, this is when I can start tasting those things all the way up to years and years. Now, I'll be honest. I'm not sure that if I went back in time and told my 18-year-old self that I could age cigars, they would taste better. I'm not sure I would have actually done it, because I had no patience then. I had zero patience then. I was a dumbass. But the truth is, these days, I look at this art form and I ask myself with each experience, what would this be like if I gave it a little bit of extra time? It's the reason that in my personal humidor, I do have a whole shelf of cigars that are just sitting there waiting for the right moment to cut and light them up. And then there are the expensive mistakes, the ones of which I have committed more than a few. I mentioned up front that I've destroyed whole cigar collections, and by God, I have. When I was going through college, and even just after college, I destroyed cigar collections, and I'm talking about like a desktop humidor with maybe 15 or 20 cigars. And this was just out of not knowing. I had no idea what kind of humidity that I needed to store my cigars at. I didn't know that there's this ideal range of humidity where cigars really thrive, and that ideal range is really around 65% humidity up to 70 to 72% humidity, and that within that range, cigars really perform very well. But outside of that range, it can produce big problems. Like if my cigars get over humidified, it can present real issues like mold and tobacco beetles that will hatch and grow like that movie Alien. Or if the humidity gets too low, the oils in the wrapper leaf can start to evaporate, the cigar can dry out and starts to lose its flavor. Probably more than anything, I just didn't pay enough attention to my cigars, and they got dried out, and it just destroyed the collection that way. But at least 1 or 2 times, I over-humidified the hell out of them and then opened up a wet, soggy box of rolled up leaves, and that was just as sad for me. The truth be told, cigars are a thing that are as much about enjoying an experience as they are about cultivating a collection. It's something I love to do so much more today. And today, I honestly have a collection of cigars that's larger than I could possibly dream of. But cultivating that collection for me is a huge part of the hobby. It takes time, energy, and effort to love on something that, what it gives me back is, again, that experience. Unlike having pets, which crap on all your stuff. Or, family, who I love my family dearly, but have a lot of problems that they need help solving. My cigars almost never have problems. As long as I maintain humidity and work on keeping that temperature around room temperature, they're just as happy as can be. And these days, the appreciation that I have for what goes into making a cigar has really also taught me a tremendous amount about how I judge a cigar. You see, when I first got into this, I would light up a cigar and it would not hit my palate quite right, or I didn't like it or something like that. I'd be like, oh, this cigar is terrible, Don whatever cigars must be terrible at making cigars. I even talk with other aficionados who have like this same concept. They're like, well, I had one of brand X and the draw was terrible, so I don't ever have those cigars again. Or, something that happened with one cigar. But these days, I have learned to appreciate the fact that each one of these is handmade. They're all completely different from each other. Some cigars just come out with a tight draw. That doesn't mean that the next one is also going to have a tight draw. In the cigar world, there's a joke that we have, and that's when you get a cigar with a really tight draw, which often comes from pinching the filler leaf too hard when rolling the cigar, and that happens typically between the thumb and forefinger, right behind the band. In fact, if you find a bad draw, you can usually feel a little bit of a knot right behind that band. The joke in the cigar industry is that roller must have had a fight with his wife the night before, or he didn't get laid or something like that. Like, it's just that the guy had a little bit of inattention to detail or rolling that particular cigar because he was stressed. But truth be told, these cigar rollers will roll hundreds of cigars per day. That means that there is a huge variety to each one. They work to take leaves and put together a particular blend to create a particular flavor profile. And sometimes the draw ends up being a little bit tighter, and sometimes it's just absolutely perfect. A lot of cigar makers will draw test their cigars, but not everybody can draw test every single cigar that they make. And so when I find a cigar these days that has like a tight draw, I will give that cigar a second chance at the very least. Now, if it doesn't hit my palate right the second time, hell, I'll move on to something else. I'm like, that just wasn't for me. But there's always this sense of like, okay, is there something I can attribute to this one cigar, or is this really just the way that the brand is for me? I've found a lot of cigars that the first time turned me off for one reason or another, and the second time became a part of my regular smoking rotation. And then there's my own personal cigar collecting rule I've developed over the years, and I call it this: one to test and one to rest. When I'm trying a new blend, I typically get 2 of them. The reason I do this is because if I get too many, I've sunk more money than I want to in a cigar that I might not like. Hell, if I get a box of them and I don't like the cigar, damn, I got a box of cigars I got to give away and hope somebody else will like them. Even with a 5-pack of cigars, if I get one and don't like it, then I'm frustrated I got the other 4. But on the other hand, if I grab just one cigar and absolutely love it, then I'm frustrated that I didn't get more. So when I collect cigars, I pick out 2 of the same cigar. It gives me that one to test and one to rest. And on the off chance that I light one up that's plugged or it falls apart because I cut it wrong or something like that, I still got a backup to go back to and even give the cigar a second chance. I personally find this to be the safest way to build a collection without ending up with a bunch of stuff I don't like and making sure I have some of the stuff that I do. And this next one I think will be probably a bit of a shock to aficionados and particularly subscribers of this channel who have heard me talk about this. But I personally was into cigars for over 10 years before I knew what retrohailing was. Honest to God, it's been since I've been in the cigar industry that I've learned about the art of retrohailing and pushing some of that smoke out through the nostrils to taste most of the flavor that is there to taste. The nostrils account for so much of that sense of taste and flavor that without, when you remove them from the equation, you lose a lot of what there is in the experience. A lot of new cigar smokers will practice this by just simply chewing on the smoke as they hold it in their mouth. And they should also know that you don't inhale cigars. By the way, that's just a kind of an important thing to mention. Inhaling cigars is a horrifically bad idea. So you chew the smoke, it pushes a little bit out through those nostrils, and that flavor profile really comes to life. I didn't know that until sometime within the last 10 years. And now the retrohail is a part of the tasting experience that I use when I craft brand new blends. And something that we talk about a lot in the cigar world is what part of that flavor profile comes across the tongue and what part can be found on the retrohail. And so there you have it. Just a few tidbits that would have made my intro to cigars so much better, but I'm still so curious to hear from you. If you're a seasoned aficionado, what would you go back and redo? Is there something that you'd like to try again or not try again? I'd love to hear about that as well. And of course, make sure you check out this video on the community on Cigars Daily Plus and now on Rumble. Thanks again for watching. This is Tim signing off for Cigars Daily, and I will see you in the comments.